Good morning. This is Pastor Zach with the Goodland United Methodist Church with your morning devotion for Friday, March 30th. Today I'll be reading from the Gospel of John in the 19th chapter. After this, when Jesus knew that all was now finished, he said, in order to fulfill the scripture, "I am thirsty." A jar full of sour wine was standing there, so they put a sponge full of the wine on a branch of hyssop and held it to his mouth. When Jesus had received this wine, he said, "It is finished." Then he bowed his head and gave up his spirit. Since it was the day of preparation, the Jews did not want the bodies left on the cross during the Sabbath, especially because that Sabbath was a day of great solemnness. So they asked Pilate to have the legs of the crucified men broke and the bodies removed. Then the soldiers came and broke the legs of the first and the other who had been crucified with him. But they came to Jesus and saw that he was already dead, and they did not break his legs. Instead, one of the soldiers pierced his side with a spear, and at once blood and water came out. He who saw this testified so that he may also believe. His testimony is true, and he knows that he tells the truth. These things occurred so that Scripture might be fulfilled. None of his bones shall be broken. And another passage of Scripture says, "They will look on the one whom they have pierced." After these things, Joseph of Arimathea, who was a disciple of Jesus, though a secret one because of his fear of the Jews, asked Pilate to let him take the body of Jesus. Pilate gave him permission, so he came and removed his body. Nicodemus, who had first come to Jesus by night, also came, bringing a mixture of myrrh and aloes weighing about 100 pounds. They took the body of Jesus and wrapped it with the spices and linen cloths, according to the burial custom of the Jews. Now there was a garden in that place where he was crucified, and in the garden there was a new tomb, which no one had ever been laid. And so, because it was the Jewish day of preparation, and the tomb was nearby, they laid Jesus there. I want to share with you a reflection on the words of Jesus, "It is finished," by Marcus Dodds in a book, Footsteps in the Path of Life. He writes, "The purpose of God in the history of man was accomplished when Jesus breathed his last upon the cross. The cry, 'It is finished,' was not a mere gasp of a worn-out life. It was not the cry of satisfaction with which a career of pain and sorrow is terminated. It was a deliberate utterance of a clear consciousness on the part of God's appointed revealer that now all had been done that could be done to make God known to men and to identify him with men. God's purpose has ever been one and indivisible, declared to men in various ways, a hint here, a broad light there, now by a gleam of insight in the mind of a prophet, now by a deed of heroism in king or leader. Through rude symbolic contrivances and throughout the tenderest of human affections and the highest human thoughts, God had been making men ever more and more sensible that his one purpose was to come closer and closer into fellowship with them, and to draw them into perfect harmony with him. Forgiveness and deliverance from sin were provided for them, knowledge of God's law and will, thus they might learn to know and to serve him. All these were secured when Jesus cried, "It is finished." We hope that you will have a blessed, holy weekend, and that you would consider joining us on Sunday for a celebration of Easter. We will gather at 6 a.m. at the Goodland Cemetery for a sunrise Easter worship service, followed by a breakfast in our fellowship hall at 7 o'clock. And we'll have our traditional Easter worship at 10:30 in our sanctuary. Have a blessed weekend and a great Easter.